what's up guys? It's Shandace from Nanny's Northwest, and today we're going to talk with my friend Mel about what it's really like to homeschool your kids. If you're homeschooling for the first time or you're homeschooling because of the pandemic, this is a great video for you. It'll be packed full of information. We're going to answer a lot of questions. If you watch it and you find value in it, then subscribe to this channel. Hey guys, it's Shandace again from Nanny's Northwest, and today we are going to chat with my friend Melanie about what it's really like to homeschool. So let's just jump right into it. Talk to me about how you decided that you would homeschool your kids.
Sure, okay. Most of my decision came after I put my 4-year-old into preschool.
Okay.
That was very stressful for me. I was struggling with anxiety at the time, and I had 2 younger kids at the time as well. So I had 3, 4, and under. And
oh my goodness. You said a mouthful.
Yeah. So getting everybody in the car and out the door and taking him in and bringing all of my other children with me, it was just it was stressful for me.
Yeah.
And it was a lot. And so he was in preschool for about 2 months. And then it was just not worth it for me.
Yeah.
I was too stressed out and dealing with some other health issues and things. And so I pulled him.
Yeah.
Because I was like, it was just too much.
Yeah.
So that's why I pulled him out. And then I went and visited a friend just for like a play date. And she is a very passionate person.
Yeah.
And she was homeschooling her children at the time. She had joined a program called Classical Conversations.
Okay.
And they loved it. They absolutely loved it.
Her kids loved it?
Her kids and herself. They just really enjoyed what they were learning, how they were learning, the flexibility that homeschooling allowed them.
Yeah.
And things like that. So then I went home and talked to my husband about it.
Yeah. You went home and talked to your husband, and I know he wasn't on board initially. So if folks are watching this and maybe one parent's on board, the other one isn't, like what advice do you have for them? How did you guys navigate that conversation? Because you're homeschooling now.
Yeah.
So what did that look like?
Yeah. So I talked a lot about the reasons why I thought I wanted to homeschool. Things like freedom. My husband now owns his own business essentially and has quite a bit of freedom. Yeah. And so homeschooling would allow us to travel and things like that. Yeah. Go to Disneyland on off-peak season or something like, like things like that, or take a road trip for 3 weeks. And so I talked to him about that. And the program that we ended up joining, Classical Conversations, focuses a lot on debate and public speaking, backing up what you believe in, explaining to people what you believe in, or the reasons for thinking the way that you do, things like that.
And public speaking, I think you said.
Yeah, public speaking. And so my husband was in sales for 10 years, and he was like, that's invaluable.
Absolutely.
Like those skills right there are things that our kids need to know.
Yeah.
And so they actually start at the age of 4 doing presentations for their class.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I mean, from the very first day, they learn what it's like to stand in front of people. And when you do that for 10, 12 years, you're comfortable. Yeah.
I know.
That's a life skill.
I'm still not comfortable.
Oh no, neither am I. Like, we have to do one presentation in CC every year, and I choke every time. Like, I hate it. Yeah. And my kids are totally fine.
If only you had classical conversations,
I know,
right?
It's true.
So tell me, you've been doing this for 5 years now. What is something you wish you knew before you started?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like there were several things. If you go online and Google homeschooling,
Which most people do.
Yeah. Especially now.
Oh yeah.
It's extremely overwhelming. People have homeschool rooms and color-coded everything.
Yeah.
And 15 bookshelves that they can put their stuff on, and bins and containers, and like there are just so many things, and it's overwhelming. Not to mention costly.
Yeah.
So some things that I think are important to know: your homeschool does not have to be complicated.
That's key, I think, for a lot of people who are
Yes.
considering homeschooling for the first time. It doesn't have to be complicated. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love
I feel like I needed to know that it was simple, because I didn't think that it was, and it made me extremely anxious again, and just fearful, like, oh my goodness, I have to do all of these things, but you don't have to.
Yeah. So along those same lines, what is something you wish all homeschooling parents, or all people who are considering homeschool, what is something you wish they knew? So it's similar to what we just talked about, but is there something you wish all parents would know rather than something you wish you had known?
Yes. I never thought that I would homeschool. That was not my trajectory at all.
Yeah.
Our kids were going to go to public school.
Yeah.
But after talking to my friend, like I mentioned, and after doing it for a year or two, I actually came to love it.
Okay.
It allowed me a lot more freedom. It allowed us as a family unit a lot more freedom.
I can see that, yeah.
We had more time together. And that scares some people. Or some people will say, oh, I can't handle my kid all day long.
I've heard that. I can't spend all day, every day.
Or
with my kid.
I'm not that kind of person.
Yeah.
I could never homeschool. And I'll just say, just as your kids adjust to it, you will as well adjust to it.
Yeah.
And your kids' attitude will change. Not all the time. There are some kids that really struggle. And that's legitimate. It does happen. But from what I've seen and experienced, it's really pleasant.
Yeah.
To have all of us here all day.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And then to let my kids go outside and play for 4 hours in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So along those same lines, how many hours do you spend in a typical day doing like homeschooling? You're teaching them something.
I would say between 3 and 4.
3 and 4 hours a day.
3 and 4 hours a day for both of my students combined.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what does a full day look like? So as you mentioned, some people say, I'm just not that kind of person. I don't want to have my kids all day, every day. I need them to go to school, to a public school or private school. What does it look like your typical day, sun up to sundown?
Sure. So you can structure it however you need to.
That's kind of the beauty
Which
of
is
it.
the beauty of it, for sure. Some
okay.
people do it after lunch, in the evening.
Yeah.
They do whenever they can. So, so we wake up early. My kids wake up usually around 7.
Okay.
So they're early risers. And then I'll make them breakfast. They'll sit at the table and eat breakfast. And when they're done with that, they do chores.
Okay.
So we just have a couple of simple chores that they do. They clean off the table and they do some dishes. And then they're free to play for a little while. We usually start around 8:30.
Okay. Okay, so there's about an hour and a half between eating breakfast and play before you start. Okay.
Yeah, 8:30, sometimes 9, depending if they're moving slowly or whatever.
Yeah.
And then after we do our chores, we gather in our living room here and we do what is called, by some people, it's called morning time. And that just means that you all gather regardless of age. And even my toddler, my preschooler will all gather together. And we do subjects together that we're able to. So we do a short Bible study in the morning. We read poetry. We study, or listen to rather, and work on memorizing a hymn. Okay. And a folk song, like an American folk song.
Oh, I love it.
Which is really fun.
Yeah.
And then I also have a couple other books that I read out loud to them, whether it's a shared reading that we all are going through a book together. So we'll do some of those things together.
So then after morning time, what do you guys move into?
After that, we move into like more structured school type activities. So I'll take one child to the table and do the pieces that he needs my help with. Okay. They're not excellent readers at this point, so I do their math with them to explain things if I need to and teach them the lesson. And then we do our language arts together as well. Okay. And while that's happening, the other child will be doing their independent work, so their handwriting and typing. And when they're done with that, or if my preschooler is being particularly rambunctious, I will have the student that I'm not working with play with her. Or go outside with your sister. Or please go downstairs. Do something. Find something to do. I need her out of my hair. So and then we'll kind of switch. So after I'm done with one student, I'll bring the other one up and do the same things with him. Oh, I see. That I did with his brothers. So my older one will then go and I usually do the oldest first, and then the youngest, give the younger one more time to play. A little bit before they have to sit still. So then I'll swap. And let my older son do his independent work and work with the other one on the subjects that he needs help with.
And you guys will do that for a couple hours. And then school is done. Do you move into playtime, dinner time?
So we try to end school before lunch.
Oh, okay.
So like before noon. Typically is when we're done. Regardless, I'll feed them around 11:30 or 12. And then if there's things we need to finish up, we'll do that after. We're gonna have a lot more reading next year than we did in previous years, so we may need to push some of that after lunch. But then they're free to play.
So a question I know a lot of viewers probably have is the socialization piece. How do you make sure your kids develop the social skills that they need, since they're working with you at home and not in a more public or private school setting? How do you make sure they get what they need?
First, I think it's important to define for yourself what socialization means to you. Because some people take that to mean peer-to-peer relationships. Some people take that to mean more like real world experience, or like part of a classroom. It kind of depends what you mean. So I would argue that homeschool kids will actually be better socialized than public school kids. One thing to think about is public school children are all in a classroom of peers. So if you're in second grade, you're gonna have 7 and 8 year olds, and that's it. And that will never happen again in your life, ever.
In real
life, that doesn't happen.
That's true, actually.
Even friends, like my kids are friends with a neighbor in the neighborhood here, and he is 3 years older than my oldest, and they play together all the time. So I think it's really important, actually, for kids to learn how to not be with people that are just their age.
Yeah.
And I would also say that my kids do get socialized a lot.
Yeah, they're very social.
Yes,
all of them.
They are.
So my friend actually submitted this question because I told her we were going to have this conversation, and she is a new homeschooler, and she said one of her fears was, I'm going to ruin my child by homeschooling them, by pulling them from public school or pulling them from private school and teaching them in my house. Like, I'm now responsible for their education. Am I going to ruin them? What are your thoughts? Feel free to speak honestly.
I would emphatically say no.
Okay.
That you will not ruin your kids.
Okay.
Again, there are situations where the parent and the child will butt heads, and it isn't healthy.
Yeah.
That may happen at the beginning regardless of how amazing your child is. But given time, you both will adjust. And I talked about that a little bit already. But there are some scenarios where, you've taught them at home for 6 months, they hate it, you hate it, and it's not okay. So that does happen.
Okay.
But I would say a majority of the time, you will grow closer with your child. You know their personality, their tendencies, what they need to work on. You have a real life current reading of what your child needs to learn, what they already know, which is fantastic. And again, they'll learn more.
Yeah.
Because it's coming from you, and you can engage them in ways that a school never could. Yeah, I would say that I have never seen a family that wasn't closer by the end, or after even just a year or two of doing it.
Okay. Yeah, that leads me into the next question. So with our current situation globally, if parents are only planning to homeschool for 1 year or until schools fully reopen, how do they ensure there aren't gaps or there aren't learning delays so that when they do go back to public or private school, that they're not behind? Or it kind of goes back to that ruining thing. You're responsible for their education. How do you make sure there isn't a learning delay when they're with you for that year or that 6 months or whatever?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I'm sure a lot of people are in that situation.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it is. It can be. The first thing I would say is that there are always gaps in education.
Yeah.
So
I know that's true for me.
Right?
I'm still terrible at math.
Me too. There's some things that I remember from 9th grade how to write a proper essay. And I literally think that's the only thing that I remember from high school. Like, I don't even know.
No Spanish? You're Japanese?
I was terrible at Spanish. So I will say that gaps are going to happen.
Yeah.
They just will.
Yeah.
They all the time.
Yeah.
So that's important to remember.
Yeah.
And I also think that if they're only going to be with you for a year, reading, writing, and math. Just stick to those 3 subjects. Everything else is fun, like science experiments and art and history, and those things are great. But those core subjects, I think, are important to focus on. And I don't think they will be delayed, because you, again, will have a better beat on what they know, what they need to learn. Yeah, totally. Yeah, you'll know what they can do.
Yeah.
And it's possible they're extremely bored in public school, and because of the speed that they're going with math or reading or whatever. Or it's possible that they've just been completely forgotten in their classroom. Yeah. And you may need to go the opposite direction and pare it back a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, it seems like you don't understand this concept. Let's really work on that, and it'll make things so much easier for you as we move forward.
Yeah.
So I think, and again, you can teach them for way less time.
Yeah. But be more effective, it sounds like. Less time, but more effective.
Totally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Along those same lines, so there will always be gaps, but if you are homeschooling your kids full-time, not just because of the pandemic or until schools reopen, how do you handle subjects that you're not good at? So if you're teaching them, you're responsible for their education, you need to teach them all the subjects, right?
Sure.
Instead of just sticking to those core 3 that you mentioned. How do you handle subjects that you're like, oh, I'm terrible at this?
There are so many ways to go about this, actually.
Really?
Yeah. And I get really excited about it because, I mean, a lot of these I'm doing currently. So there are multiple ways that you can handle subjects you don't do well in. You can do those subjects online. My son is going into 3rd grade math, which isn't too challenging for me, but number one, it allows me to work with my younger son personally, maybe longer than I would be able to otherwise, but also it's self-taught.
Yeah.
He can do as much or as little of his math as he wants to within reason, right? But if he knows a concept, he can keep going. And he gets super excited about working on the computer anyway, so for him it's like a win-win. But the computer will teach him how to do his math. So that is one option. There are online curriculums available for some of these things. Another option is to pick a curriculum that is scripted. There are some curriculums that literally have the words that you need to say.
Interesting.
So the math curriculum that I'm doing with my younger son is scripted in that way. It's Saxon Math, which is a pretty popular math program. It's kind of dated, but it's solid, if that makes sense. So, but it has everything that I'm supposed to say. It gives me a list of the materials I need for that day, and
awkward.
You can just pick up it gives me a list of the materials I need.
All right. And it also will just walk you through exactly how to teach your child that subject.
Wow. So someone wrote the script for you.
Yeah.
You follow the script and you
Totally.
can teach the subjects that you're not super confident in.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. They're also one thing that I have not personally done, but some people do, is they hire it out or they exchange with a friend.
Oh, that's a great idea.
You'll have a friend that's like, oh my goodness, I love doing art.
Yeah.
Our projects stress me out.
Yeah.
I can't handle the mess. And I'm like, but I will sure bring my 3 children over to your house and you can do all the things. Another thing I'll say is that there are families that only have one child or like an older child and then an infant who's not involved in educating at all, right? So a good way to get the socialization piece, I guess, for them, or also to handle subjects that you're not terribly good at, is to find a buddy and just approaching them and saying, hey, do you think we could get together one day a week? And so our kids aren't alone, or so we can kind of tag team the subjects, or so I can see how you're doing things and vice versa. It can be really helpful to have kind of a buddy that you can bounce ideas off of and that your kids can kind of do their school with at least part of the time.
So if parents you listed a lot of resources that are available for parents, homeschooling parents. If parents are like me and they're kind of cheap, or they just are on a budget, or they're only going to do this for like a couple months, how much does it really cost? And can you do it for free?
You totally can.
You can?
You can.
Ah, yes.
There is a site called Easy Peasy Homeschool.
Easy Peasy Homeschool. Okay.
.com.
We'll link to that.
Yes. And this person, mom, has listed out for you links and information to teach all of the subjects. And actually it's kid friendly. So your child can go online, click on the day or the week or whatever. I haven't actually looked at it myself, but it provides them, like it'll say math and then give you a link where they can learn the concept, and then a link to play a game, and then they go on to reading, and it'll say read 40 pages in this week.
Wow.
But it's all online and it's 100% free.
Oh my gosh. So people have taken the time to put these things together for people who want to homeschool, who are new, or who've been doing it for a long time.
For sure.
They can utilize these resources.
Yeah, or in this kind of emergency situation
I know.
that we're in right now.
This pandemic, I tell ya. Yeah. So I know that you are a part of a co-op as well. How did you find that co-op?
Yeah, so I've done several different group type things.
Oh, have you?
So yeah, so currently we're in classical conversations still, and this will be our 5th year doing that. And again, I heard about that from a friend who was homeschooling when my son was 4. So that's been really great, and they have their own website and information about it, classicalconversations.com. And then another thing that we do is we are a part of a parent partnership program. And that is through the public school system.
Okay.
So not a lot of people know this, I think, but most, I don't even know if it's most. And honestly, I don't know if it's outside of Washington State. I'm sure that there's something similar. But in Washington State, public schools, school districts have something called a parent partnership program.
Okay.
So my kids go to a facility, not a public school, it's a different separate building. They go and take classes there.
Okay.
And what that also allows us to do is to utilize, they have a library there, they have a computer room there, and they also have curriculum there. So we get all of our curriculum for free.
Wow.
Yeah. As long as it isn't religious.
Yeah.
That's not something that they can provide. But my handwriting and my math and, some of art, some of those subjects that are not religious for us, then we can get all of those things.
So should people, should they talk with their public school, like administrator, and find out if there are resources available to them?
Yeah,
that's great.
Call the public school and ask if they have some sort of program like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's wonderful. So the next question, as we're talking about curriculum, I'm sure a lot of people want to know, where do I get curriculum? You just mentioned a place they can get it for free, but along those same lines, how do you find the right curriculum for your kids?
That can be a real challenge. It's helpful to know how your student learns best, whether they're an auditory learner or they need, like for math, for example, whether they need manipulatives and they need to feel and see the concept for themselves, or whether workbooks work really well and they're self-motivated in that way, or again, doing it online or something like that. So it's important to kind of think about how your student learns.
Okay.
There's an amazing resource called 102 Top Homeschool Curriculum. Something like that. 102.
It's a big number.
It is a big number, and it's a thick book.
Okay.
It's written by Kathy Duffy, and she has put together a list of her top curriculum.
Okay.
She's reviewed them all or tried them herself, and it's an amazing resource because it's very thorough.
Okay.
So you can look at this book, and she actually has like a chart at the beginning of her book. So you go to math, and then across the top it's like, are you a visual learner? Are you a kinesthetic learner? Are you a whatever? And then it also asks what kind of teacher you are.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Because we all teach differently.
That's true.
And then it'll line you up with a curriculum, or whether you have what your homeschool philosophy is, and that's a whole deal.
Okay.
There's classical or Charlotte Mason or Montessori, things like that.
Yeah.
So you can kind of identify curriculum that best fit your teaching style and the learning style that you're going for in your homeschool as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's super, super helpful. They're pretty short little blurbs, but they explain really well what the curriculum will be like. This is best for this kind of learner, or this is what you can expect.
So the first step is to figure out how you teach and how your child learns, and then use that to sort of guide the type of curriculum you choose.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's genius.
I think that can be helpful. And then I also will say that it is completely normal if you try one method or one curriculum and it doesn't fit for you.
Yeah.
Don't hesitate. I mean, it is more costly. You can look at like OfferUp or the Facebook Marketplace or things like this to find used curriculum that's on there all the time.
Yeah.
But you can change your curriculum easily and be like, okay guys, we're gonna do this a little bit differently and see how that suits you.
Yeah.
So
another point for homeschooling, right?
Yeah.
You can just shift gears as you see fit.
And don't be discouraged by that. It's totally normal to like try 4 different math curriculums and be like, this is the one. This is better. Yeah, for sure.
All right, last question. If someone is watching this and they're still on the fence, they're like, I don't know if I want to homeschool my kid, or they are homeschooling for their first time, do you have any advice for them? Like, what would you say to them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would probably say to keep it simple.
Yeah.
It does not need to be complicated. It does not need to be, you don't need to have all the best resources. You can teach your kids really simply and do a really good job of it, even if you just get books from the library.
Yeah.
You will be able to do it because looking at the internet can be extremely overwhelming, stressful, and can make you feel like this is something that you can never do.
Yeah.
And I would say it can be much simpler than you think it can be. And it is extremely gratifying to spend that much time with your kids because you'll get closer with them.
Yeah. That's encouraging. You converted me.
Oh, good.
I shall homeschool from here on out. All right, bonus question. You ready?
Yes.
Okay, tell me the worst part of homeschooling and the absolute best part of homeschooling.
Okay.
Worst first, because it's probably funny.
Worst. I would say that sometimes you just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to do that when your kids are all up in your face.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a reality, right?
Like, I mean, seriously.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, you know what you do? You put on a movie and you say, hey guys, we're done for the day.
Yeah.
Mama needs a break.
Yeah.
And I can't right now.
Yeah.
So, you put on a movie and you make yourself coffee and you sit.
Yeah.
And be alone.
Yeah.
Because that is needed.
Yeah.
And it is totally okay.
Absolutely. It's part of self-care, right?
Yes.
Especially when you have your kids all day, every day.
Yes.
Yeah. Best part.
Best part.
What makes your day? Or what brings you the most joy when you're homeschooling your kiddos?
I would say, I mean, the flexibility that it allows is fantastic.
It's kind of enticing.
Yeah, it really is great. And then I also, the thing that brings me the most joy is seeing my kids get along. That's not always true, again, for all families, and I understand that. But the likelihood that not only you will get closer with your child, but that siblings will get closer as well is extremely high.
Yeah.
Because they'll have to.
Yeah.
They're doing everything together, and that does not have to be a negative.
Yeah.
It's extremely encouraging when my kids go and play together and they ask each other questions about what they're learning, or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I
it's
love
really
it. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned a lot. If you have questions that we didn't answer, leave them in the comments. I will connect with Melanie and we'll get them answered, and we may even do a second video. Thank you. Bye.